for coming. It's really nice to have such a great crowd here. Marlis is going to teach us everything we need to know about the container garden, from big to small, right?
Yeah.
And so it should be a great session, I think. And I just wanted to remind everybody about next month. We're going to have Garden is Art. And we're going to have some great presentations. I don't know if you were at the fall fling. Spring fling. The table decorations that had the dried flowers in them. The guy that made all those is going to do part of the presentation. We're going to have on flower decorating. It should be a really great session. So I hope you all come next month so we can find out what to do to make things pretty with all the things that we're growing in our containers this month. And I want to remind you that we're having our garden tour on the 28th. And if you haven't been on a garden tour before, you really need to come. It's a time that you get to snoop in everybody's yard and see what's going on in the backyard. And it is absolutely amazing how many fabulous gardens we have here in Yankton. And I am, Kathy, where are you? You will not be disappointed, right? We've got fabulous gardens on the tour. We'll meet at the Reformed Church on Burley. And you can pick up your ticket there and go to the gardens. We'll hopefully also have plant sale, including native plants. So it'll be one-stop shopping as in addition to checking out what you can do in yards in Yankton. So don't miss that. So I'll let Marlis get going on talking about container gardening. Looks like she's got some interesting things to say.
Okay, container gardening. If you don't have a lot of area to plant in your yard, container gardening is an option. And we have a professor at SDSU in the horticulture department who lives in a second-story apartment. And all she has is a balcony. And she raises food and flowers and herbs and plants for her cat and everything on that little balcony in containers. So it's just a matter of gardening is gardening. So there's just a few things you need to change if you're going to do it in containers. And I brought some of my containers along here. So we'll talk about that. Okay, this is brought to you by the Missouri Valley Master Gardeners. Our group is the one that gives you the lessons, and the library, the seed library, provides seeds, and the library has the meeting place for us. So it's a group thing. Okay, if you have limited space, it's an attractive alternative. And even if you don't have limited space, you can take advantage of planting in containers to supplement what you have in your landscaping. You can have a garden on your patio, your balcony, your deck, your porch, your privacy fence. Of course, a lot of you probably have house plants as well, maybe some herbs and some green plants and some flowers in the house. So it doesn't all have to be outside. On your privacy fence, you can hang things from your fence, or you can plant things at the base of the fence, either in a pot or in the ground, and use the fence as your trellis. You can add a bold statement to your in-ground beds by taking some attractive pots and adding them right into your landscape. And those are all container plants in that picture. So I don't know if you can see, the picture's not real large, but it's like shelves, and every shelf is full of pots of different flowers. They've got them hanging on the side of the house, excuse me, between smoke, dust, wind, allergies. My voice is shot. And then they've got a table, and they've got plants on the table, and they've got just plants in other pots. So look at that garden, all container gardening. By merely altering the size and style of your containers and the variety of plants, you can create portable gardens. So if you don't like the way something looks right now, just move it around and create something different. You can create privacy screens. You can create focal points. There are some beautiful pots out there. All you need to do is complement those pots with some plants. And the number of ways you can transform and vary your garden's design is unlimited. It just depends on your own imagination. You can also use a French technique called potager, and that's a small container garden where you're growing your food and you grow just enough for what you're going to be using in a daily or weekly basis. So instead of having a 30 by 100 foot garden, you might have a few pots for the main things that you like to eat. Container gardening provides for a flexible planting site, freedom from poor soil, the ability to move your plants around with the seasons, and you can even replace plants in those pots as the seasons go on. You can add bright spots of color, and they're more accessible for gardeners with various abilities. So if it's hard for you to crawl around down on the ground, the pots are taller, and if you lift them up to a table or something like that, then they're right here at a very comfortable level to work. It can eliminate problems with soil-borne diseases, because if you plant plants over and over and over again in the same square footage, you're probably going to leave diseases in the soil that can affect your crops the next year again. You can manage the problem with invasives. If you plant mints, M-I-N-T-S, of any kind, they spread like crazy. So you can eliminate that by putting them in a pot, and then those roots can't go anywhere. So this is also a great way to introduce children to gardening. They could have their own little pot with their favorite vegetable in it, or their own pot with some really pretty flowers, and you can get them started on gardening. Now, there are advantages and problems to container gardening, just like there are if you raise out in a garden bed. So some of the advantages: you can grow in places where in-ground isn't practical, like that second floor apartment that I was talking about. There's no way that you could raise the garden there. You can move with changing weather. I take advantage of this because if hail is coming, we pick up our pots and move them in the garage. You can move them with heat and shade. What kind of sunlight do your plants require? How hot is it in one place? So you can move it out of the sun and into the shade if you want to. Living on a farm, it's spraying season. So every farmer all around us is spraying for, I don't know what they're spraying for now, but it smells to me like herbicides. Okay, my garden, my grapes often get hit because they don't care what direction the wind is from, as long as it's not blowing towards their yard. But then it's blowing towards mine, and then my plants get affected by those herbicides. So I have been known to, I smell spray, I'm going to move my plants into the shop. So I can take advantage of protecting my plants that way. You can control the soil composition. Right here we have a lot of heavy clay soil, which sometimes makes gardening difficult without doing a lot of amendments to the soil. But you can do that right in your pot. And it's an attractive addition to your landscape. Notice that these pots are on dollies. So if you have big, heavy pots, or this would really help me when I need to protect them from hail or herbicides. Just roll them around. Some problems, it may be more expensive. You don't have to buy the pots. That's a pot. This cattle mineral tub is pot. And farmers give those away because they don't know what to do with all those great big tubs. But the more expensive part of it is the soil, because you are buying the soil to put into those pots. And that tub takes several bags of potting soil. Now, I will tell you a little bit later on that you can reuse that soil up to a point, but we'll talk about that later. It also needs more water and more fertilizer in your in-ground garden. If it rains, then the whole ground is wet, and those plants can draw water not just from that little space that they're in, but from all around. So if you're watering more and you're paying for that water, that is a little more expensive than just relying on rain. It takes more fertilizer because there's not a lot of fertilizer in potting soil. I'll talk about that later too. Another problem, large containers can be heavy, especially, these are light, and so is that livestock thing. But if you get, ceramic pots that are beautiful, they're heavy right away before you put anything in them. So do take advantage of those dollies if you've got something that's really heavy. Some crops are too large for container gardening. It really doesn't work to grow sweet corn in a container, even one of those big ones. Watermelons, there are really not varieties of watermelons or winter squash that come in small versions. And summer squash, there are, and cucumbers there are. So not all plants that you might want to grow come in small sizes. Plants may become root bound. So the whole, when you empty your pot, the whole bottom of the pot might be full of roots. And you maybe need a babysitter. So if you're going on vacation, plants in pots need to be watered. And we'll talk about how you can address that too. So what can you plant? Almost anything, unless it's too big. Vegetables, believe it or not, a few years ago, it was so wet that I could not plant my garden for about 3 years in a row. I absolutely could not get into it. And so I started with these things. I had like 7 or 8 of these on my driveway, and that's how I raised all my vegetables, because I couldn't get into the regular garden. Most herbs are fairly small, and so that's a good thing to put in a pot. And the cool thing about herbs is you can take them into the house for the winter then. Flowers, succulents, dwarf varieties of citrus, and of course in our climate we can't leave those outside in the wintertime. You can wheel them into your garage. Fruits, this shows you strawberries. Another thing is blueberries. Our soil is not acidic enough to successfully grow blueberries here without lots and lots of amendments. But if you buy the small varieties and put them in pots, and then they go in the garage for the winter, then you can raise blueberries. And as I mentioned before, plants that spread aggressively, that's a good thing to put in a pot. You can create, and I had one, a do-it-yourself strawberry tower with 5-gallon pails. You stack them on top of each other. You drill a hole in the side that looks like that. all the way around. It was about, I think I had 5 pails. And then in the center of it, there was a plastic pipe. We drilled tiny, tiny little holes in that, and that's how you watered it. There are instructions for that online. All you have to do is Google do-it-yourself strawberry tower. And of course you can buy those. And then I was looking through things that were available, and I found at Walmart, and maybe they don't have it in stock, but 5-tier stackable vertical garden. So it's got like 3 things on a side, and then you turn the next one and stack it on top of it. And so it's got a whole, however many you want to put on there, and you can plant. That would be a good thing to put strawberries in. Okay, how do you choose containers? Well, select the material and the size. Plastic, terracotta, buckets, baskets, fabric bags, all of these things are possible containers. These are the fabric bags, and when you're done, you can wash them in the washing machine. This one is a 10-gallon, this one's a 10-gallon one. I have a 7-gallon one, it's a little bit smaller. These are throwaways, Terracotta, the disadvantage with terracotta is it really dries out fast. And if you're going to plant in terracotta, soak the pots overnight before you put the soil in, and then the moisture from the soil won't all go out into the pot before you even get started growing. All of these things need drainage holes. Drills work. Now you can't really see the holes in here. They're there. Can you see the holes in here?
Yeah.
And there's a big crack.
Yeah.
So this one can't be used anymore. But yeah, my husband drills all my holes for me. And then if you could see up here, there's holes in the top. That's what I tie with twine for my tomato cages. Because even if I plant smaller varieties of tomatoes, they still get heavy in their cage. And so if I have them tied in there, then they're not going to flop over. However, my dog does like to chew on twine. And so we had to switch from twine to wire to put tomato cages in there. For pots that are like glass or pottery, you can use a concrete or masonry bit to drill holes in there if they don't have holes. Dark colored pots absorb more sun and heat, and that will heat up the roots in the really hot part of summer. So like I chose to get these bags. Most of the bags that you can buy from a seed catalog or whatever are black. And I did not want black for that reason of getting hot. So I didn't plant anything in these yet because I wanted them to be clean. And if I had stuff in them, then they'd be pretty heavy to haul around. Heavy containers need dollies. And if you're putting this on something that you care about, like your deck, you may not want the water running through your pot directly onto your deck. So you could put a plastic saucer, something to elevate it so the water dries out of there fast. If you don't care about where they are, then you don't have to worry about that. Tub and pot sizes. Okay, the 7-gallon, that's this one, is good for herbs, lettuce, spinach, radishes, onions, and other things, but I just named a few pretty common ones. 10-gallon, that's this one. Beets, eggplant, cabbage, carrots, and beets. 15-gallon for tomatoes, cucumbers, peas, beans. And you can look at the measurements on there. The first one is the diameter of it. 20-gallon potatoes, sweet potatoes, melons, and squash. Now I have raised sweet potatoes in one of those great big, or not sweet potatoes, potatoes in one of those great big tubs. And they were the best potatoes I'd ever had because they were in potting soil. The soil was loose. Every potato was perfect. They were all perfectly round with no crevices, no knobs, nothing. They didn't have scabs or anything like that on them. And talk about easy harvesting. Now you could dump it into a wheelbarrow, but since I live on a farm, I have a tractor with a loader. So we just dumped the tub into the loader, picked all the potatoes out, and then saved the soil. Consider the mature root depth. So if you're going to plant carrots that are 14 inches long, oh, this would work. But something like this probably would, well, that's not one of my pots anyway. And the deeper containers are generally better, and taller plants have deeper roots. So this is actually a 3-gallon pail, not a 5-gallon pail, but with a 5-gallon pail, you'd have a little more height there if you're planting something deep. Whoops. There. Okay, so do look at the size of the containers because that makes a difference in what you can plant in it. Now the soil. Garden soil or topsoil is too heavy. Do not use it. It also, if you're digging it out of your garden where you had some plant diseases last year, you're going to be carrying them over right into your pot. Or I have millions of grasshopper eggs in my garden. Well, believe me, if you took that and put it into a pot, you would have grasshopper eggs in your pot. And they would hatch in there and devour whatever you've got in your pot. Good quality potting soil. There's lots of different kinds of potting soil. But that's what you need. You need a good quality potting soil. And you can get special potting soils. This one happens to be for cacti. You can get them for orchids. I mean, if you go through and look at all the potting soils there are, and those are specially formulated for that particular kind of whatever you're growing in there. You can also make your own. So these are 2 recipes. The first one is from Square Foot Gardening Foundation, and that's 1 part compost, 1 part peat moss or coir. Now coir is from coconut. It's left over from the food industry. And they're with the interest in Thai cooking and all of that, we have lots of coconut milk and stuff like that. Well, what do they do with the outside, the husk? They turn it into soil. And 1 part coarse vermiculite. This is vermiculite. You can buy it that way. You can see how light it is. This is actually mica. Are you familiar with that old mineral where you peel all the layers up? Yeah. That's so much fun. There's another one called perlite. Perlite is from volcanoes, and they heat it up to thousands of degrees, and it pops. It's those little white things that you find in potting soil that you purchase. So both of those are used to lighten up your soil so it's not so compact. The advantage of perlite is it doesn't break down. Vermiculite tends to disintegrate and compact. So if I was going to choose one and only one, I would go with perlite. You can also buy that by itself in a bag. The second recipe here is 1 part topsoil, 1 part peat moss or coir, or compost, and 1 part sand, and this comes from Iowa State University. So you can mix those up on your own. It's probably a little cheaper that way, but it's more work, and you have to accumulate all this stuff. So I found when I was in shopping this year that there was a new potting soil I'd never seen before, and maybe it's just that I'd never seen it before. But it's for raised beds and container gardening. And so I bought a bag of that, and then I compared the labels between that and the regular potting soil. And here's what I found. They both have the same soil ingredients. So moss or coir or forest products or whatever, which would be wood. And so far they're the same. The regular potting soil has perlite fertilizer and compost in it. The one specifically for containers, instead of perlite fertilizer and compost, it has poultry litter, bone meal, kelp meal, alfalfa meal, and worm castings. So it's got its own slow release fertilizer in it from those things. And we know that when you're growing in pots, you need to fertilize more often. So that's the advantage if you're going to be doing container gardening of getting the potting soil that's for containers. The potting soil, regular potting soil, may have fertilizer incorporated into it. That is for the first spurt of growth. It keeps those little plants growing. And then you need to continue to fertilize it. You do with the other two, but those things have their slow release. And if you're into natural or organic, that's natural and organic to have, fish oil, meal, and that kind of stuff. All right, so you've got your containers, you've got your soil. Now what? Cover the drainage holes in the bottom with landscape fabric or coffee filters. That's just to keep the soil from running through the holes when you water. The new recommendation is not to put anything into the bottom of the pot like gravel or broken pots or crushed up pot bottles. They will lighten up your container, but they shorten up the root distance. And what happens is where the soil touches, let's say, broken pots in the bottom, it tends to form a barrier there, and the roots and the water don't go through very well. So just fill the whole thing up with soil. You may need slow release fertilizer, or you can put slow release fertilizer into the soil. And you can buy that at garden centers too. So you're ready to plant. Fill your container about 3/4 full. Then set your transplants on the mix and add the potting media to about 1 inch below the rim. If you notice in that top picture, what is she doing to that root-bound plant? Yeah, she's breaking it up. She's separating those roots. And that's something that you should always do. So then set the transplants on the mix, add your potting medium, press it lightly. You always want good soil contact with your roots so that they can grow well. And then water it. And again, that also puts your soil right around your roots, as well as giving it the water that it needs to get growing. Now, let's say you want to plant something like, these are not potatoes. I think they said in the picture it was dahlias. I think it don't look like dahlia to me, but anyway. That's the way you plant it. I plant my potatoes. So I'll tell you how to plant potatoes. Put 5 inches of soil in the bottom of your container. Put your potatoes on top of it about 4 inches apart. So if you've got a big tub like my livestock tub, you can put a lot of potatoes in there. And then cover it with 2 inches of soil. Pat it down, water it, all that stuff. Then every time the potatoes get about 6 inches tall, put more soil, potting soil in there. Cover up about half the plant. So if they're 6 inches tall, you want to cover up about 3 inches of potato. Every time the potatoes are 6 inches tall, you repeat that until your soil gets to the top of the pot. And you're going to get more potatoes that way because they will grow all the way up instead of just being where you planted the potato. It is recommended that you plant early varieties of potatoes. A couple of them that you can get around here are Purple Viking and Red Norland. Those are early potatoes. They're ready to harvest when the blossoms appear if you like new potatoes, or you can wait until the plants die off in the fall and harvest them then. And I told you how easy harvesting is. Now, if you're going to sow seeds, plant them to a depth and spacing that the package tells you to. And if you make good use of your packages, it will always tell you on the back of the package how deep to plant these. The general rule is twice the size of the seed. Well, some seeds are like dust, so that's about what you want on top of them. You know, if you plant them an inch down, they're never going to come up. But some seeds like, beet seeds are pretty big. You plant them a little deeper, but it will tell you right on the back of the package, soil depth, 1/8 inch. That's for these little tomatoes. And then you can mulch to prevent water loss. You don't have to do that right away. You can wait and that will keep the soil, the top of the soil cooler too. So you can use straw, grass clippings, ground up leaves, whatever you would use for a mulch around your plants. In an in-ground garden, you can use here too. Notice this tomato, which isn't very big, is staked. So if you're going to put stakes or cages on your tomatoes, put the stake in first, then put your soil and your tomato plant in there so that it's right up against that stake and ready to tie on as it grows. If you're using a cage, you can put that in right after transplanting your tomato, and you may need to tie that onto your container like I explained with my big container there. I told my daughter this morning that I went out and put the cages around my tomatoes, and she said, "Oh no, release the tomatoes." Plant selection. Okay, how do you choose what goes into your pot? Choose compact varieties and look for the labels bush, dwarf, or determinate. Determinate means it stops growing at a certain point. It doesn't get any bigger. And tomatoes, that's a common word for tomatoes. So if you like smaller tomato plants, I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage, but determinate tomatoes, they all ripen at about the same time. So you're not going to be picking tomatoes all season long off a determinate plant. Some vegetables need supports, and if they're growing up tall, they might need supports. You can companion plant in the pot or in neighboring pots, so you don't have to plant only one thing in your pot. You could plant in your tomato thing, you could put around the bottom, you could put like some basil if it doesn't get too tall. You could put parsley, little herbs around the bottom of it. And companion plants, if you look back on the library's website and go to the seed library, all of our previous presentations are there, and we've had several on companion planting. So what do you want to plant with what and why? Sometimes it's because the nutritional needs complement each other. Sometimes it's because the companion plant will attract pollinators. Sometimes it's because the companion plant will repel insects. So there's all kinds of reasons for planting certain plants together. And you can go back and search through our previous presentations. This one I think is really cool. That's beans. And they've used strings for the beans to grow up on. So can you imagine how pretty that would be with pole beans all the way up to the top along a fence or something like that? The top picture is actually a bush zucchini.
Oh.
So you can raise zucchini in a pot. You just need to have a big enough pot and a small enough zucchini variety. Now, where do you get this information so you know what to expect of your plant? A number of places. Your packages will tell you how tall it gets, what its spread is, gives you all that information. In addition to, this says they need sun, they mature in 60 to 65 days. So these are, that's what I'm gonna put in my little pots here, these short carrots. The carrots that I raised in the garden are long, but these, because they're in a pot, they're 3 to 4 inches long.
Oh.
Yeah, cute. They look cute on the package.
Marlis, I have a question. Is it just tomatoes that are determinate or not determinate?
Peas are.
I can never find that word on a seed package.
You won't find it on the seed package. You will find it in a seed catalog, or you will find it online. So if you Google, I do that all the time. This is orange hat tomato. So if I Google orange hat tomato, it will give me all that information online. So I love computer.
Marlis, one time we took a field trip to a Hutterite colony. At the time, their peas were starting, and they picked peas. They had a whole group of people just walked down, picked them all the way through. They were gonna have one more picking, and they were pulling them up as they did it, because peas are also a determinate plant. Now, I remember growing up and we tried to find more peas through the whole summer. We got zero, just tired of it. And
And then, like our speaker at the Spring Fling said, pull them out, plant something else.
plant them, do it again, rip them out.
Yeah. If you're planting transplants, these little things are a wealth of information, just like your seed package is. And like this is rosemary, and it says it likes it moist and well drained. It grows 2 to 4 feet tall, and it says it's from zone 6 to 8. Now we live in zone what?
4 to 5.
5 here, I think now.
Just
in
barely.
Yankton.
Just barely.
So this rosemary, that doesn't mean you can't plant it. It means rosemary here will be like an annual. It's not going to overwinter. In the south, that is a perennial plant. This is parsley, this is sage. And again, it says, this is the sage grow in full sun. It gets up to 36 inches tall, and it spreads 24 inches. So all of that will give you information about what size pot do I need to put this in? How big is it going to get? And I subscribe to seed catalogs, even if I don't order from them. If you go online and you look for Territorial Seed Company and ask them for a catalog, they will send you one, along with emails about every third day telling you what their specials are. But I looked up tomatoes here, and this tomato called Tasty Lee is a deep green to determinate plant. They are aggressive producers and provide good shade against sun scald. So that's a determinate one. It doesn't say how tall it gets, but being determinate, it's not going to get real long. There was another one here too. The Beaver Lodge series. The thing about seed catalogs is they have stuff you can't get in even in a gardening center. You can't get them like at Walmart. They've got basic seeds there, seeds that everybody's familiar with. These have cool stuff, just to read about. The Beaver Lodge series, it says, there seems to be more fruit than leaves. What's more, these extremely compact, determinate plants tend to creep rather than grow tall and would be perfect in a hanging basket.
Oh,
So, yeah.
What was that one called?
Beaver Lodge series. And there are a number of them in the Beaver Lodge series. And then Johnny's is another really, really good informational catalog. So I said page 17 here. And what I like about this is they give you pictures. So here's all these carrots, and they've got a little, how long are they? A little chart along the side. Then it shows you the carrot, and you can see exactly how long they get. So if you want to put carrots in tops, that's really helpful. And even if I don't get that variety from Johnny's, at least I know. Another one that was really good was about squash. Let's see. It's the same kind of thing. Here's 2 pages of a chart of squash telling you what the vine length is.
Oh, wow.
And on these whole 2 pages, there's only one that's short. And that is orange smoothie. What does orange smoothie look like? Oh, it looks like a little jack-o'-lantern pumpkin. But, you know, how helpful is that to know how long those vines are going to be? So Johnny's has all kinds of charts like that. It's a wealth of information. I am a reader. I am always reading. And believe it or not, seed catalogs are one of the things I read. I also read cookbooks. So all kinds of information. Use your seed packets. For transplants, use those little plant stakes and take advantage of seed catalogs. Now here are some variety choices that I found that were recommended by SDSU and recommended in some of the seed catalogs. They're not all going to be varieties that you recognize. I do want to point out a couple. This little finger carrot is the one I found here at, I think it was Baumgart's. Little finger, the one that gets 3 to 4 inches long. Cucumber, sometimes you can tell by the name. I mean, look at salad bush. That tells you right there in the name that that's going to be a bush carrot. Let's see, under the broccoli, small miracle. It's going to be a small broccoli plant. Let's see. There's another one here, peppers. Pot a pino. That's a jalapeno you grow in a pot. And then this one I wanted to point out because I had a friend who raised the escalator zucchini. It grows up. So she grew it along her fence like pole beans. And she said it got over 6 feet tall, and it had zucchini all the way up the stem. Now, there's only one place I've ever found that, and that is a place, I think they're in California, they're called Renee's. And Renee's goes all over the world to find interesting varieties of vegetables and stuff. And I actually have was thrilled. She was a speaker at one of our International Master Gardener conferences. But that's the only place I've ever seen escalator zucchini. But if you're familiar with the Tromboncino squash, which would not be good for a container, because the vines grow about 20 feet long, but that is really a wonderful summer squash that if you let it ripen, it turns into a hard-skinned winter squash that keeps. And they're light green, and they kind of curve like that. They have a bulb at one end where the seeds are. So not like a zucchini where you've got seeds through the whole length of it. It's only at that bulb end. You cut that off and you can use the rest of the squash. So, but that's not good for containers. Pole beans, if you're going to, if you have a fence or if you want to rig up something like that one picture we saw, you can do that. Celebrity tomato, I know, is a one that stops growing, a determinate one. That was my mother's favorite tomato. Now, if you want to do more than just plant stuff, you can try to make it pretty. And the design rules are the same whether you're planting flowers or whether you're planting vegetables, because you can plant vegetables in the same pot and make them look pretty. So the design rules are you need 3 things in your pot. You need a thriller, which is something tall. A thriller for flowers could be grasses, spikes, cannas, one flower that gets real tall. In your first picture on the left, you can see the thriller there is the grass, ornamental grass. And here we've got the canna. And so those are my 2 flower ones there. You need fillers, which are usually flowering plants that kind of grow out and fill in the whole empty space of the container. And you can use, for vegetables, you can use cherry tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, and Thai basil. If you've never raised Thai basil, that is so pretty. Light green leaves with purple flowers. So, I mean, that would really add to the appearance of your vegetable pot. And then you need a spiller, something that falls over the edge of the container. And for flowers, well, I guess it doesn't have to be flowers, sweet potato vines, edible flowers like nasturtiums and pansies, certain types of petunias. I believe the wave petunia is the one that grows over the edge. And of course, many of the herbs will do that too. And there are that one tomato that we mentioned that would be good in a basket because it grows creepy instead of up. You could put that in there too. So if you want to go beyond just planting vegetables to have something to eat and you want to make them look pretty, you can do that too. Watering and fertilizing. As we mentioned before, watering is really, really important because it's going to dry out faster than the soil that you would plant it in your garden. So the size of the container, the smaller the container, the faster it will dry out. The bigger the container, the more it will retain water in that extra amount of soil. The weather makes a big difference, and that's in your garden too. More water if it's hot. More water if it's windy. Does that describe any place you know? The age and the size of the plants, little water. Big plants, lots of water. So the amount that you water is going to change over the course of your growing season. The type of watering system in that top picture, you can see a drip system that you connect to a garden hose, and it has little holes in that hose that just drips water out. Now, you don't have to have a raised bed to do that, do you, Pam? Pam's got this set up great. She's got all kinds of pots, and this drip system goes from pot to pot to pot. And you can get plugs for the holes that might be hanging over the space so that they're not dripping water all the time. The other neat thing about a watering system like this is you can connect it to a timer. And so you don't have to physically be out there doing this all the time. And this is what you want if you like to vacation. You don't have to get somebody to come in to water your plants that may not know what they're doing. You can just set up the timer to water at a certain time, and hopefully your watering system will work. Do check frequently, just in case something goes wrong. Don't let the pots dry out completely. If they do, the soil is going to pull away from the edge of the pot. The soil is actually going to become resistant to water, and it's going to be very difficult to get it rehydrated so that the water will soak in and then keep the soil moist to water the plants. Stick your finger in the top inch of the soil. If it feels damp, there's no need to water immediately. Use that as your guide. So about to your first knuckle. You should be able to feel some dampness. Use fertilizer formulated for a specific crop, and I mean by that, there's different fertilizer for flowers than there are for vegetables. They even have some fertilizers, like you can buy fertilizers that are just for tomatoes. So there's all kinds of fertilizer. Use it half strength. So read the instructions on your fertilizer package or bottle or whatever you're using. And if it says to use, a tablespoon per gallon, then use a half tablespoon instead. And water every 2 to 5 weeks. I fertilize on the 1st and 15th of the month because that helps me keep track of it. So, fertilize it. Okay, some good fertilizers are, now, the first number stands for nitrogen, and then phosphorus, and the third number is for potassium. And a 15-30-15 or a 20-20-20. Those fertilizers are good, and those numbers are on your package of fertilizer. 15-30-15 is one. 20-20-20 is the other. You don't want to get too much nitrogen. That's the first number, especially if you're raising vegetables. Like if you have too much nitrogen in your tomatoes, you will have the most beautiful plants you have ever seen, but they're all leaves, not very much fruit. If a plant is growing vigorously, it has healthy green leaves, it has sufficient nutrients. So you don't need to worry about it. If it's spindly with small leaves, it might need additional feeding. If the lower leaves are yellowing, it might need nitrogen. That's pretty common in corn. I raise sweet corn and popcorn, and when the leaves start to get yellow on the bottom, that's when we give it a shot of fertilizer. Too much nitrogen in fruiting plants and even flowering plants, you will get more leaves than anything else. Okay, end of the season. What do we do? I guess this might be one disadvantage of container gardening too. Where do you put all these pots?
Yeah.
Hopefully you have a place. Leave the plants in the containers until after frost. Or like potatoes, if they're dead, plants are dead, well then harvest them. But your other plants, if they're still actively growing and you're getting whatever you want from them, flowers or vegetables or fruit, leave them till frost. And then pull the small plants and cut off the large plants. Any ideas why you cut the large plants? Think of what size roots they've got. Can you imagine pulling a great big tomato plant? You know what kind of roots it's got underneath it? It's going to be hard to get out of the pot, and it's going to be a big mess. because it's gonna pull all this soil out with it. So if you cut off that tomato plant and then you empty the soil out, you can easily get that big root out of there, separate it from the soil, compost that. Again, since I live on a farm, we empty our soil into the loader of the tractor, go through it, take roots out and stuff, and then I put it back into these big pots, my big cattle pots. You can discard the roots in a compost pile. If you have a large tub or you have a wheelbarrow, those work good for putting your soil in there. And you can then decontaminate the pots. And to do that, wash them just in water, then soak them in a 10% bleach solution. That's 1 part bleach to 9 parts water for 30 minutes. Then rinse them really well to remove any bleach residue. Then let them dry out in the sun. And once they're dry, you can store them for the winter. The soil that you have shows you several containers there that you can use. You can use garbage bins, big Rubbermaid tubs. Label your soil. What did you grow in it? If I grew tomatoes this year, I want to use that soil for something else next year. It would be great for flowers, or leafy vegetables or something like that, but you don't want to plant something from the same family back into the same soil. Now, you can take your soil, mix about 2/3 old soil with 1/3 new soil. And my friend who grew the escalator zucchini takes that extra 1/3 that she's used for several years, dumps it on her in-ground garden. And she said it's made an unbelievable difference in the soil in her in-ground garden. It's not nearly as compact as it used to be. Okay, bibliography. My favorite thing. Doing research and reading over. We get a paper called Farm Forum that always has a gardening section. Well, guess what it was this month? How to grow vegetables in small places. I did get this, the one on there, Burroughs, Butterbaugh, and Lang, was written by 3 horticulturists at SDSU. I have a few copies of that. I'll put them on the table here. If you would like to take one of those, you may. Or you can go online to SDSU Extension, click on the Garden tab, and search for container gardening, and you can just print off this article too. So that's SDSU. Any college or university has it's good scientific information. They have done experiments, research, comparisons, and they're going to give you really good, accurate information. So all of these came from different universities all over the United States. Figured container gardening is going to be the same no matter where you go. For some things, you might want to center it in South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska. You might want to go to those colleges or universities. So you just type your topic like containergardening.edu or .ext for extension, and it will take you to those good, reliable, scientific sources. I'll put these over here. Okay, any questions?
Do you want to get rid of the tub?
That one with the crack in, I would, except I need to show it tonight yet. If you go to anybody who raises cattle,
I don't know anybody. I've tried to find people before. I've even put up ads before, and I still didn't know anybody.
anybody in here know somebody who raises cattle? Get together with her.
I have a question about I cannot find potting soil without fertilizer in it. And the problem is, if I'm planting some new plants and I have established plants which have a fertilizing routine, then I've got to try to remember what's the new one and what's the old one. And I hate having to fertilize some and not fertilize the other. How long do I not fertilize it before I wish they had potting soil with no fertilizer in it.
Yeah, I don't know, that one that I had a picture of, ProMix. Check the label on that, because that is a little bit different, potting soil than some of, like the Miracle Grow that we're all familiar with.
They used to have the unfertilized kind of Menards, but now they have this pro-mixed with fertilizer.
Oh, with fertilizer. Okay, well then my recommendation would be don't fertilize right away. Wait about a month before you go back into your regular routine that your plants
So
have.
then you have to trust me to remember which plants are the new ones.
You use labels, you never trust your memory. Label your pot and on your calendar, write down fertilize, whatever. Question?
I was just gonna make a comment, there's a couple of, industrial hemp farms in our county and just beyond, and one of their waste products is hemp hurd. And, so they've been looking for a use for the hemp hurd. And they gave some over to, Yankton Nursery, and then I got a little bag of it also. And we're thinking it might be a substitute for either vermiculite or perlite.
Oh, okay.
So that might be, I was gonna try it and see what all happens, but that could be a really great use, and it would be all staying local and.
Also, do
easy.
you watch Garden Hour? Okay,
Yeah.
South Dakota Extension, every Tuesday night, 7:00, they have an hour-long garden hour where professors from SDSU talk about aspects of gardening. And you go to the SDSU Extension website and you can go into the gardening area and you can sign up for that. And then you watch it online. Last week, they were talking about using sheep wool.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sheep wool in their gardening mix for, I don't remember what they were using it for. See, I write notes, I have to look at my notes.
At the wool was like a mulch, but then they had some that was pellets.
It was pelleted.
That was more, something like, that was more like a amendment as well.
Yeah, so. And the one that they're using for the mulch, that was just raw wool that they said there's no market for wool anymore. So the sheep farmers are looking for ways to get rid of their wool. And so people are using it for mulch in their gardens. But it takes several years for it to break down, I think is what I remember.
Does that grow bag have drainage holes?
No, but it's fabric. So it's gonna go through it. Nope, it's not like, you can come and look at it. It's kind of like felt. Come and look at it and feel it. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to tell you, here, if you want to see this, this is the coir. And you put that into a pot, you add water, the directions are on the back, and it expands, and you can use that in your soil. I do a lot of mixing in this thing. So I'm not mixing big quantities of stuff, And this is my little handy gardening fork that I mix with. It works wonderful. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Have you done anything with self-watering?
No, I haven't. Has anybody else in here? Self-watering?
I do.
Anything you want to add?
They work great, because I only have to water them probably every 7-10 days.
Okay,
What are you using though? I'm using the big pots, like the cattle pots. But what are you putting in for them? Some of them I have drain tile in them, and some of them I have milk jugs in.
With holes in them?
Yep. I've used the drainage stuff.
yeah. Well, that was kind of the idea behind this strawberry thing. It had a pipe with holes in it in the middle. Yeah. Okay, anything else? Thank you for coming.
That was great.